It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, we talk about the all-new Jaguar. Then we recap Destination Defender. And finally, we talk about adjusting your classic Land Rover steering. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Beres, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at theberescollection.com or follow us on Instagram at theberescollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I am the voltage regulator to Steven's mild hybrid. I am the intermittent charge of podcasting, Goss.
I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, exciting things from our good friends at JLR this week.
Huzzah!
The J finally coming back into focus, as was promised, with the all-new Jaguar, and not just a bunch of fancy people doing fancy things in pastel colors and the new font for the company name, but an actual car.
An actual car? Is it? Oh, it's a prototype, isn't it?
It is. I think it's a
like
concept.
It's not even a prototype. Car. It's a concept.
I think they have
a concept of a car.
Of a notion of a concept of a car, of a thing, of a maybe. But it is now revealed to the world at the Miami Art Festival, which I think is very purposeful. They've obviously made a statement, Art Week. It is not being revealed at a car show, and that was very purposefully stated by our good friend, Uncle Jerry, by... they
didn't want it seen next to other cars.
They don't see it as a car. They see it as a piece of sculpture of
that does not bode well for your use of this vehicle.
That's right. It's a piece of interpretive art, of performance artwork.
Yeah.
And
here's what I don't understand about that, right? Like, so they're like, oh, it's a piece of art, but yet it has features that you would maybe need to have on a car. Like one example might be the side view mirrors have been replaced with cameras. Right. And if it was just a sculptural art piece,
right,
you wouldn't necessarily bother with that, right?
No, you wouldn't. What do you think the chances are that those make it to the final thing? Or if they're going to have mirrors on.
I mean, I think if you remember, the original Cybertruck concept also had no side view mirrors, and people were like, it's got to have side view mirrors, right?
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, we're going to do cameras instead of side view mirrors.
Right.
And apparently that didn't pass muster with the National Transportation Safety Board.
Yeah.
So they had to put side view mirrors on it. So I expect, unless there's a change in legislation, something similar will happen with this vehicle.
Yeah. All car manufacturers will put cameras on the sides and then have to make actual mirrors for the end until the end of time. It seems like they're just never going to stop doing it. So yeah. Eventually, they're going to wear down the. I don't know. Maybe with the new administration, you do.
I mean, you just have this reductionist design where people are trying to like remove more and more shit from vehicles, and pretty soon they're gonna be like, well, it has 3 wheels.
It's just we're
and
back.
And then the next guy is gonna be like,
Robin.
oh yeah, 2 wheels.
It's a motorcycle.
It's a motorcycle.
That's right. It's what do you think overall? What was your first impression seeing the? We'll talk about the name in a second, but what was your overall impression seeing the new car?
You know, the first angle that I saw of the new car was kind of a rear 3/4 view.
Right. Yep.
And I immediately thought Chrysler Crossfire.
That's right.
And I think I showed you a picture of it.
That's right.
And I was like, check out the new Jaguar. It's a Chrysler Crossfire.
It is a Chrysler Crossfire.
And, you could argue maybe that the Chrysler Crossfire took that design cue from the E-Type.
Yeah.
And then it was
possibly
rehashed on this new version of the Jaguar. But if you go look at a 3/4 rear view of a Chrysler Crossfire, awfully similar.
Awfully similar. Yes, I agree.
Awfully similar.
This is like somewhere between RoboCop and a Chrysler Crossfire. That's
Failure to comply.
Like an Ed 209 and a Chrysler Crossfire.
I like Ed 209.
Yeah.
I feel like Ed 209 is a future less aggressive policing that we can aspire to.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a step backwards from where we are right now. Yeah, exactly. It's got a lion growl. It would be a nice feature of this car if it had the Ed 209 lion growl.
So I don't know if you have read about the Jaguar and its many features. It has a very Spartan cockpit, and you can hide all of the screens on the dash.
Yeah,
I think that's a feature.
It's interesting, including the speedometer and things like.
So apparently, there's a strip under the windshield that has a readout with like critical information, assumably the speed. They didn't show it on, but they also. I didn't see a picture of it with the screens deployed.
Right.
So I'm assuming there's some sort of screen and it retracts into the dash somehow or something. But
I do like that you can drive
either
it just like information free.
Either that or they didn't have it finished by the time they had to unveil it. And they were like, oh, yeah, this is the stealth mode right here.
It's in stealth mode right now.
It's in stealth mode right now. So we haven't quite finished the dash. But
yeah.
It's actually, they're actually saying that it's just retractable.
I also feel like, speaking of stealth mode, it does look a little bit like the Batmobile from the Batman the Animated Series.
Okay.
A tiny bit.
Yeah.
It also feels like it might be, if you were to put the shields up on your E-Type Jaguar, if you were to deploy the shields, it looks could look a little bit like that.
Yeah, Zorg drives this car in The Fifth Element.
That's exactly right. This is very Zorgy. Yeah, it's very Zorgy. Yeah. I mean, it certainly is, as Jerry McGovern stated in his little intro video. And if you haven't seen that, I definitely would suggest you go and see it. Liza watched the whole video and sent it to me, and I took a look at it. And I agree. It really does kind of put you into the mindset to understand the car a little bit better once you've had Jerry walk you through it. I mean, some time spent with Uncle Jerry is never time wasted. He really does walk you through the idea of like, listen, this is not just rule breaking. This is no rules at all. This is this is the bare knuckles cage match of designing a crazy car thing. And I've always said I like big swings. I like things that are very crazy and very bold. And
I think I would have gone farther if I didn't have any rules at all. Back to the cameras, like why?
Yeah.
It seems like too grounded if that's the prompt. We're just going to play devil's advocate there. Now, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about possibly my favorite feature.
Yes.
And I don't have this printed out, but I'm just going to recite this from memory, and we'll have our fact checkers look into it later. But So on the side, you have this brass ingot, they're calling it, which is behind the front wheel, but ahead of the door.
Sort of a square. It's similar to almost like the grills on the Range Rover, kind of a shark fin sort of. Yeah.
You might say it's a signature panel.
If you will. Oh, Jerry. Oh, God damn it.
Got us again. So this brass ingot, it has the leaper or the leaping Jaguar logo on it, and apparently that pops out, and the camera is behind it. Okay.
Oh, cool. Okay. So that's where the rear view camera for the. Okay.
Yes, correct. So that is not what I want to talk about. The section above that on the driver's side, there is a panel, and there's a removable panel, and behind this panel, which is they're calling the prism case. Behind this prism case are a series of totems.
I beg your pardon.
There are totems that are brass, there are totems that are travertine, and there are totems that are alabaster. Okay, and this is not a description of the new like Legends of Zelda game,
right?
This is actually the Jaguar concept vehicle.
Okay,
and so you take one of these totems, right, and then you go back inside the car. Okay, so this is on the outside of the car.
So
then you go back inside
from
the
its
car.
little
prism
spot.
Case.
Its prism.
Yes.
Okay.
You take it from there. You put it in the car. And I don't remember exactly where you put it, but you put it in the car, and then it analyzes the totem, and then your experience inside the car changes. And so that might be a seat heating setting, or that might be a lighting setting, or that might be a scent. Apparently, there are scents associated with these various totems. So it's like an experience. You take one of these little doodles and you put it in the car, and then it alters your experience inside the car. What's the matter, Steven?
Oh my God. Well, we're going to start working on the Linus totem for the Jaguar right now. We're going to put the team on it. You'll be able to get your Linus totem stored in your whatever.
It's freezing cold and it smells like Mexican.
It's just like food. And you're going to be able to get that. You're going to be able to keep that in your Fortress of Solitude up front there, whatever the fuck it's called. And you're just going to love it. It's going to be great. Yeah. Sell those on the online store. Please. Get ready for
your
that.
prism case. So if that sounds like something that you need in a vehicle, look no further than what's this one called again, Steven?
This one is called, as all of the two-door sports cars have been called. They sort of type them, right? You've had the D-type, right? The sort of the racing car. Then you've had the follow-up to that. You've had the E-type, right? Which is probably the most famous. One of the most famous two-door British racing cars of all time, right? Sports cars
Beautiful
of all time.
Yeah.
Then you've had the F-Type, the modern version of that car, also incredibly popular, one of the most beloved modern Jaguars, I think, around. And so, of course, you would think, well, this is an electric one. This is an all electric car. So maybe you'd do something. Would you do something around electricity? Obviously, E-Type's already taken. You can't really do that. So would you do something? Would you do something around electricity? Would you do something around? Would you call it the the AC type? Would you call it the something? No, they've decided to call this the Type 00. So the Type 00, or if you're just saying it quickly, the typo.
The typo.
The typo.
What, were they going to correct that?
No, it's a typo. It's
no.
Okay. Yeah, it's a typo. Yeah.
Now this is a product tie-in? Are they going to do a Type 007?
Oh, I hope so. Is
that a thing?
Yeah, I don't know I don't know what they were working at there, but yeah, it's interesting. They've made some interesting choices on the typo.
If this car was a James Bond movie, which one would it be?
I feel like maybe From Russia with Love.
I'm going to go with Skyfall.
Skyfall, maybe. Yeah.
Skyfall.
Yeah. I do like the two launch colors, or the two, not launch colors, but the two prototype colors that they've done this, what I can only describe as RoboCop silver, which is this sort of bluish, pinkish silver, silver with blue and pink highlights in it, like RoboCop, purpley pink highlights in it. And then just pink, just champagne rosé pink, to capitalize on the popularity of Korean pop star rosé. They've decided to go with.
No, I've heard this color described as Miami pink.
That's right, Miami pink.
Miami none other than Uncle
Jerry. Yep, with a wink.
Yeah. And then the blue color is London blue.
London blue, yeah. London blue, or like I say, RoboCop silver. It is, London blue, because London is known for its RoboCop color, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
he's a constable there. It's Robo-Constable.
And instead of a gun out of his leg, it's just like a club.
It's a truncheon.
A little truncheon pops out.
And he's got a whistle.
Yeah. Stop her. There'll be trouble.
They call him Robo-Bobby.
A Robo-Bobby.
Say that 10 times fast.
Oh, my God.
Bet you can't.
Yes, you can't.
All right. So what else is happening over at His Majesty's Jaguar Land Rover?
Well, man,
very exciting.
I'll tell you, it's been quite a couple weeks here.
Yep.
We at some point need to do a little recapping on the old Destination Defender, because of course you and I and the rest of the team were there, and we've
It was a good event.
Oh, man, we had our panel. And if you haven't listened to that show yet, I suggest you go back and listen to it because, man, it was super fun. Those guys were awesome.
Pretty legitimate.
Wow. It was super cool. The Jenna and Liza, of course, did their panel on the old Rebel Rally, which was awesome. Their panel was super good. Great questions. Really super interested audience members.
I don't know if you noticed this, but their panel was better attended than the panel by Shaun White.
Significantly. I did notice that. I did notice that, yeah. Just saying. Just saying. Shaun White seemed a little upset. I'm just saying. Shaun White attended their panel as well. But they didn't attend his. So just saying, kind of dunked on Shaun White. So anyways, very nice lad, that Shaun White. But,
Everybody was great. Everybody was great.
Everybody was great. It was a great event. It did, of course, rain like crazy.
It has to.
Holy moly.
It
was a soggy mess, and yeah, it was a good time. Good time. Great facility, man. That was a neat ranch and stuff like that. But yeah, if you haven't heard that interview, please do go back and listen to it because it was really fun. Great Mike and the gang from the LA County Sheriff's Department Search and Rescue, as well as the folks from down in South Carolina and the Biltmore, North Carolina, and the Biltmore Estate Land Rover experience. And good times. Good times.
Yeah. Everybody, the cast of characters were there. The A-team was reunited. So, lovely time. Thank you to Jaguar Land Rover for having us there. It's great to see the Defender Service Awards. Some well-meaning and deserving charities received new, customized Defender 110 SUVs. That's right. A phrase that is seared into my memory.
Yes, you heard that one a few times. And I got to say, if I could spend one day with anyone at that event, it would be the guy that owns Pelican cases.
Oh, yeah. We got to get him on the show.
Dude, that guy seems like so much fun.
Let's send him a note. We're
going to get that guy on the show. We got to get that guy on the show.
It seems like he has a one-on-one forward control.
I think he might. It really looks like he might.
He said his whole family has Defenders on like several continents. So
I know, right? We got to get that guy.
He's going to be stoked.
We're going to reach out.
He's a wild man. He's like off script. Everybody else is reading off the teleprompter. This guy comes up there, blows it out of the water.
Oh man, he's a free spirit. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Free spirit. Great guy. Really great charities. Really fantastic. Canada very well represented as always. And per usual, I guessed wrong on every charity. I guessed wrong.
You did.
Even the one that I knew that won, I guessed wrong. So, yeah. Bingo.
I gotta get some action on that next time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, it was terrible. So, and we had the pleasure, because of course this is in Malibu, only an hour away here from the workshop, of having no less than a parade of celebrity guests here for visits at the workshop. Of course, starting with our very good friend Bob Steele here with us for part of the weekend, which was absolutely fantastic.
Super good guy. And if you get the opportunity to sit in the airport with him for a couple hours, take it. Recommend it.
How was your airport stay there in Burbank with Bob Steele?
Man. Did a Bob Steele interview impromptu right there on the jetway. It was fabulous.
Yeah. He's a great guy and a big supporter of the show. He had the Camel Trophy truck for the weekend and was a very willing ambassador. I still haven't seen it back. I don't know if we will. Yeah, I think it's...
Shipped it out, huh?
Last time I saw it, it was headed to Virginia, and that was the last we'll probably ever see of it. So, that's all right. And then had the illustrious Mr. Sean Gorman come and
he came
visit.
by, huh?
Yeah, he did. And we spent some time there. Oh, it was fantastic. Always great to see Mr. Gorman.
Did he fit through the roll-up door?
Through the roll-up, just barely. We had to open it all the way. Yeah, he's a tall lad, that Mr. Gorman. But it was really, really good times. Really good times. And of course, we had Ralph Sarek and his wife drop by the workshop, had some lunch, and come and hang out. And so, and Ralph actually, he drove out. Yeah, he drove all the way out. So,
Camped
folks,
the whole way.
Yeah, folks as far as Ralph drove all the way out here and just to come to Destination Defender. So
that guy likes to drive.
Cool. He loves to drive. Yeah, he loves to drive. He's got a nice Defender to do it in too. So nice little camper situation that he's building, these little tow behinds, and very cool, very, very cool rigs. And no, it's great. Great to spend time with everybody, all of our Land Rover friends here on our coast for a change, which we don't get the benefit of seeing a lot of those people out here very often. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody. A lot of enthusiasts showed up, brought their cars. So it was a good vehicle watching in the parking area.
Speaking
the
of,
day after
Yeah.
Destination Defender,
Yeah.
Land Rover made another big announcement.
pretty huge announcement that
Talk about that.
Well, they are going to be, and by they I mean Defender, is going to be the official vehicle partner of Dakar.
What?
Pretty big deal.
No way. No
Pretty
way.
Big deal.
What was the first vehicle to win the first Dakar?
Was it a Peugeot? I don't know. What was it?
I believe it was a Range Rover.
It was a Range Rover. That's right. I think that's,
I believe it was a Range Rover. So
that's
this is a continuation of their long and illustrious career in the Dakar.
I think that's right. Yeah, it is. It's pretty awesome. And then in 26, they are going to field a works team in the Dakar in
They're going to campaign a vehicle. That's
specially built Octa in the,
I don't say this
Dakar.
word very often, but that is ballsy.
That is pretty significant. Yeah, especially a modern vehicle like the Octa, preparing it for Dakar, that's significant business. That is a real proving ground for a vehicle. And
when you're competing against, I would say more well-resourced teams.
For sure.
That have a little more experience in the last 25, 30 years. 4 years, maybe.
Absolutely. Oh, for sure. No, I mean, there are teams that have been doing this at a high level with backers like Red Bull and things like that for a long time and are very serious about it. And good on them. I mean, man, well done, JLR, for going out and, going for it. I really respect them. And I like to think that it was the Rebelle Rally that pushed them over the line on this.
I mean,
yeah,
it might have been.
I think so. Because it's serious business. The Dakar is not easy. It is actually really still one of the only races out there that is still dangerous in a significant way. A lot of the score events, the Baja and things like that.
Have you seen combine racing?
Yeah, that's true. I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Hillbilly lawnmower racing, things like that. Yeah, but yeah. No, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I can't wait. I would like to be invited as the official press partner of Defender, as the official vehicle partner of the Dakar. So just putting that out there.
You better get your totem ready.
Get my totem. Get your totem out of the Fortress of Solitude side box or whatever the fuck it's called.
It's a prism case.
Oh, of course, yes.
And it's where they keep General Zog.
That's General Zog is in the prison case. Get your totem out so that you can get your seat warmer set to the right level. I mean, it's very simple. Come on, get with the program. Speaking of setting your seat warmer to the right level with your custom Linus totem, it's getting chilly out there, Ikers, which means it's just about time for the holiday. And I think, like many of us, people are thinking about what to do with that little bit of time off they have over the holiday and their Land Rover parked up in their garage. In some cases, in the colder parts of the country, where they maybe have some time to do some work, some deferred maintenance, if you will, on that classic Land Rover. And we thought today maybe we would do a little talk about the Land Rover steering holiday overhaul. And, just go through that steering system and talk about it. This comes from someone asked me, in the last couple of weeks, how the hell do you get that spring back into the steering relay once you've taken it out? And, it's funny because I think everybody has a few different ways of doing it. There's the official way, and then there's ways that a human being can actually do it. And and then there's all kinds of little things you can do when it comes to your steering system to just make it better. So what's your sort of go-to, like, when it comes to a new car that's rolled into the shop there, and you want to kind of assess the steering and figure out what might need tending?
So the first thing that we do is something that we have two people to assess the steering.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give the steering a visual inspection, see if you notice anything disconnected, totally wrong, missing bolts, whatever.
Not right, yeah.
But then you want to have somebody in the car turning the steering wheel back and forth.
Right.
And usually that person, you want them to turn the play out of the steering. And what that means is you want to turn the steering wheel until the wheels start turning, and then turn it back the other way until the wheels start turning.
Right.
And on a new car, that distance would be zero, negligible,
very,
right?
Yeah,
very little. No significant
backlash.
Play back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on an old car that's maybe 70 years old, all of the components may have some degree of play, and the
Several
accumulation
feet
of
in
that
other
play
direction.
can be pretty significant.
Yeah.
We've definitely seen vehicles with like half a turn of the steering wheel, I would say. Maybe even a full turn. I might have even seen a full turn.
Possibly, yes.
Full turn. But, from the factory specification is approximately 2 inches at the rim of the steering wheel. And that's the maximum.
Yeah.
Right?
That would be considered a worn situation, yeah.
That's the maximum amount of play that is supposedly acceptable on a series Land Rover per the factory.
Right.
So, some things that can cause play starting at the steering wheel and working your way down. If the splines in the steering wheel itself are loose, the pinch bolt is maybe loose or the splines themselves are not tight, you can get play right there. So right at that first junction.
Yep.
And then moving down the steering column, you can get play in the worm and recirculating nut.
Yep.
And between the nut and the selector shaft.
And you find that comes mostly because people don't realize that there's actually fluid that goes into that box.
Very common. Very common. I would say people are generally good at keeping oil in the engines.
Right. Yes, that's true. Yeah, people
And
know engine oil goes into the engine. That's right.
Yeah. They're less good about putting oil in the transmission and transfer case.
Yeah, they kind of just take it for granted that there is oil in there. Yeah.
And they're pretty bad at keeping oil in the axles, but they usually have it.
There's there's a lot in there, so it's harder to fall out.
They often don't know that there's oil in the swivels.
That's right. Yeah.
And then they didn't even realize that there was oil in the steering box or steering relays.
That's right.
So if you were to think of a fluid reservoir on a series Land Rover that is neglected, it would be the 3 steering fluid reservoirs.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And because there is no like little plastic container or anything in a series Land Rover that is holding fluid for those components specifically, it is not obvious at all that there is anything in there or not in there or otherwise.
No. So, it's pretty common to see a steering box with no oil in it. It's pretty common to see swivel balls with no oil in them.
Yeah.
And it's very common to see a steering relay with no oil in it.
Right.
And all of those 3 things should have oil in them.
Yeah.
So moving down from there, you've that's kind of the steering box assembly. And so there can be quite a bit of play inside the steering box. There can also be play radially on the selector shaft. So it can be moving around in its bore, and that can translate to movement at the steering wheel. So the worm gear on the end of the steering column is trying to turn the recirculating nut, which is trying to act against the selector fork. And that in turn, that selector fork is moving around in its bore. And so that can add some play to that. And so that's something to look for. That's easy to look for when that person is turning the steering wheel back and forth. Look at that selector shaft as it goes out and intercepts the drop arm or pitman arm, it's sometimes called.
Yep.
And if that's walking around, that can be a problem. The mounting hardware that mounts the steering box to the bulkhead support is also a common source of play.
So often that is just loose.
Yeah, that thing has been sawed back and forth a million times, and the steering box is walked around, or somebody's taken it off and forgot to put the lock tabs back on. And those fasteners, it's very common for those to be loose. There's a lot of force against that assembly, and so that can work loose over years and years, and the fasteners can be broken. The fasteners can be worn. The fasteners can be missing.
Above the exhaust, so it heat cycles like crazy. All kinds of stuff. All kinds of reasons for that to be loose.
Yeah, and the earlier ones use smaller fasteners than the later ones, and so often we upgrade those fasteners to the larger Series 3 types, even on the earlier cars, because it is more secure and it is a safety thing. So we like to do that. So the pitman arm it usually is tight on the selector fork or the selector shaft. It's tapered splines, and so that is usually tight, but it's something you should look at to see if the the selector shaft is moving, but the pitman arm is not moving. So it's loose on its splines.
Right.
And then, of course, below that is the first ball joint of 6. There's 6 ball joints, and you want to inspect them all.
So many ball joints.
And sometimes, it is hard to tell if the ball joint has play in it by looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the reason for that is there's a rubber boot over the actual ball joint.
Or there should be a rubber boot over it.
There should be a rubber boot over it. And frequently that conceals the play because when you turn the wheel, this ball joint is going to move, and it's going to move back and forth. And so the assembly is actually moving position, and it's kind of hard to tell, is it play? Something's moving. What's moving? Is it moving together? Is it moving separately? So what I like to do is kind of put my hand on it with a finger or two on each side of the ball joint. And you can really feel the play because there'll be a difference in movement. So instead of those two pieces moving together, they'll move independently. And oftentimes you'll feel that kind of difference and that clunking back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something you want to look at. You want to inspect all of the clamps on every single ball joint.
Mm-hmm.
A very common problem with ball joints on Land Rovers is the earlier vehicles use a semi-threaded ball joint. And that means that part of the shank on the ball joint is threaded and part of it is unthreaded. Okay. And over the years, they not only changed that to a fully threaded ball joint, but they also changed all of the rods, right? So it's very common for them to be mismatched, because both types were produced. Semi-threaded rods, fully threaded rods, semi-threaded ball joints, fully threaded ball joints.
Mm-hmm.
So they aren't really compatible with one another, because the smooth part of the inside of the rod shouldn't be clamped on the threaded ball joint, right?
Right.
And vice versa. You can't thread partially threaded ball joints into a fully threaded tie rod or drag link, because it won't actually go in all the way, and then that affects your steering geometry.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not compatible, but it's very common for people to mismatch them because they don't know. And they're often sold as being interchangeable or fitting a variety of years. So it's really important to look inside the ends of the tie rod and the drag link, even though that's a pain in the ass, to make sure that your ball joints and tie rods and drag links are interchangeable or compatible with one another. So that's a really common problem that we see, and it can be dangerous because those things are not clamped securely as they should be in a factory engineered environment. So that's something to look at. And then moving down, you've got your steering relay. Okay?
Right.
So your
steering relay, yeah.
The steering relay is what changes the direction from lateral movement to transverse movement in the steering system. Okay? And so the first thing that we look at with the steering relay are the top and bottom relay arms, because those are frequently loose. The splines are frequently worn out, or the pinch bolts are loose. And so the tie rod and the drag link and transverse link are often moving, and the steering relay shaft is not. And so there's
it's just
play
rounding
in those
out the top
arms.
of that shaft. Yeah.
Really common, and sometimes you see those completely stripped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that those splines be good, the pinch bolts all be tight.
Yeah.
The relay itself is simply a shaft that's supported by bushings that goes down through the frame.
Yeah.
Right? It's all it is a shaft with splines on each end. People look at that assembly and they think there's more going on inside of it.
There's nothing going on in there.
There's not a lot going on inside of it. It's just bushings at the top, bushings at the bottom, a relay shaft, some seals, a housing. It's a pretty simple mechanism.
One super, super strong spring.
It does have a spring to keep tension on the assembly. Those things can be rebuilt, and you should be aware that many of the aftermarket ones are prone to failure. The relay shaft can snap. Yep. And so if at all possible, you should, if you can, rebuild your original relay as opposed to replacing it with a offshore manufactured replacement.
I've
Even
also
though-
found, and
Even though they're $50, it's
Yeah,
really,
right.
it's really tempting to pay $50 for that. But if you've seen vehicles where this has broken, it's worth it. It's worth
careen
it.
into a ditch.
Yes.
Have you
And he's not
found-
joking. That does happen.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, that's what happens. That you lose steering. You literally cannot control the vehicle anymore because you break the thing that turns the wheels. It
It's
makes
true.
it impossible to turn the wheels because that is the shaft that breaks, and
It's
it's
true.
incredibly dangerous. I don't know if you've had this complaint, but I've had people complain that the bore doesn't fit through the chassis correctly, and so the retaining nut on the bottom doesn't fit properly in the new ones.
that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So the relay itself, and the relay arms can cause play in the steering
Mhm.
because all of that movement translates to the steering wheel. So the relay itself can move in the chassis
Right.
if it's not secured properly, which
Yeah.
is what you're alluding to. And this can happen in a couple different ways. It's really common for people to replace the chassis on Land Rovers because they've rusted.
Yep.
And the bore of the chassis on these replacement chassis is not always the same diameter as the original. And because of that, the steering relay fits down through the chassis and it has room now all of a sudden to move around. So the bolts that secure the relay at the top and the collar that secures the relay at the bottom are what keeps it in place. It keeps it in position, keeps it from moving around.
Yeah.
The aftermarket relays are a different diameter than the original collars. Okay. So if you put an aftermarket relay in your car and you use the original collar, it's going to move around. You're immediately going to have play in the steering.
Doesn't work at all.
immediately before you do
Doesn't work
anything
at all.
else. So we offer collars that secure the steering relays in two different diameters, one for original steering relays and one for aftermarket relays for that reason. And we actually got a car from New Hampshire yesterday that had this exact problem, and the steering relay was clunking around in the chassis. So moving on, you've got your tie rod and your drag link. The drag link is the first one. That's the one that goes from the relay to the right-hand wheel or left-hand wheel, depending on whether you have a right-hand drive or left-hand drive car. And then you want to inspect those tie rods just in the same way that we discussed inspecting the transverse tie rod or transverse link, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have your tie rod itself. And then, of course, at the extremities, you've got your steering arms. And you want to make sure all those bolts are tight on the arms because the arms themselves can come loose from the swivel housing. And that can cause play. Then the next inspection is really with the vehicle's wheels lifted off the ground. You want to kind of work the wheel back and forth, both up and down at like grab the tire at 12 and 6 and rock it back and forth, and then do the same thing at 3 and 9 and see if there's any play there in the swivel housing itself. And the swivel housing can have play in the railco bushing or cone and seat if you have an earlier vehicle, or it can have play in the steering arm to swivel housing interface. Or, you can have issues with the swivel ball to the axle. The bolts can be loose. Several different things there can cause play in the steering. So you want to inspect all of that stuff because it's a safety critical thing. And then, of course, you want to measure your alignment. Make sure that your steering geometry is set up properly. There's also, some very easy adjustments that you can make if you look at all that and you're like, oh, everything looks good, but it's still tight, or it's still loose, or it's still, rubbing, the tires are rubbing on the frame, so there's a few adjustments in the steering system that you can adjust. You can, of course, adjust the toe in with the tie rod. You can turn that. You loosen the clamps and turn that. You can adjust the steering stops at each wheel, which are frequently missing. They should have steering stops.
Yeah.
There's little brackets
just the brackets and bolts are gone. Yeah.
Yeah, there's little brackets that fit on the swivel ball flange, and then there's a corresponding extendable stop that's one of the swivel seal retaining bolts, and those are frequently missing or broken.
I think some people do think that bolt hasn't been tightened all the way or something, hasn't been done all the way up. or something.
And those fasteners are generally Whitworth.
Mm-hmm.
So be aware of that. They're quarter 26. So if you do need a new one, they are specialty fastener. So you want to have those screwed in as far as possible, but not so much that the tires touch the frame or touch the bodywork at full lock. And then the other adjustment is on the steering box. There's a lock nut and bolt that works against the selector shaft. It actually pushes the selector shaft in contact with the recirculating nut.
Mm-hmm.
And that interface is tapered. So as it wears, it'll start to develop play between those two surfaces, and you can tighten that, unlike the earlier steering boxes that are used on earlier Series 1s that are non-adjustable. Mm-hmm. So that's actually a really nice feature, and it frequently takes up play that's inside the steering box itself. So those are all adjustments that you can look at if you notice, issues with your steering, and you look through all of your steering components, and you're like, well, these don't really have play in them, or I'm not sure what's going on. Those are all things that you can do. And certainly refer to your workshop manual, and there's a lot of good information in your workshop manual about how to set up the steering. If you don't have a workshop manual, get one today. We sell them over there at Pangolin 4x4, so definitely pick one of those up. It's a prerequisite to maintaining your vintage Land Rover.
And what a great Christmas gift for that special someone in your life with a vintage Land Rover, if you don't have a workshop manual. Another great thing is, even if it's just as a keepsake, is the factory accessories manual. It's just fun to look through.
Optional equipment catalog, it's called. So if you're looking for that, order yours today. Now, word of note, the earlier workshop manuals have a section on optional equipment. The reprints do not have that section. So if you want an original one, get yours today over at Pangolin 4x4. So the workshop manual covers the optional equipment section, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a further optional equipment parts catalog that kind of lists everything that you can get and all the various accoutrements for your vintage Land Rover.
All your little bits and bobs.
It's amazing.
It also does, the workshop manual specifically, back to the original question, it does cover how to disassemble and rebuild your steering relay, which at one point mentions gathering your safety bag and safety bagging the bottom side of your relay. The relay, because once you can take both the top and bottom cover off of it, and it actually is fine. It won't come apart because the bushings are being held in tension by the spring. But as soon as you tap that shaft out of the housing, once one set of those bushings has come out of tension, all that spring tension goes, and the safety bag becomes obvious as to why you need the safety bag. You definitely do want to cover the end of it, because
whether you're opening a jar of spring snakes or you're rebuilding your steering relay, get your safety bag at Pangolin 4x4.
Yeah, official Pangolin 4x4 steering shaft safety bag. Yeah. So you guys actually use the Land Rover tool, and do you get like two guys to try to compress that spring? Like, I couldn't possibly do it myself. It's just too hard. There's no way.
Not only are we professionals, but we have a rigorous physical education program here at Pangolin 4x4. And any one of us, even Kevin, who is older than the pyramids, can
he is very old,
rebuild a steering relay.
Wow. Yeah. That is really.
So we do use the factory spring compressor. It's like a U-shaped device with handles on both sides. It kind of looks like handlebars on a bike, if you will. And we use that thing to compress the spring and then lock it in place with the little bolts that secure the covers. So that's how we do it.
Wow.
That's how we do it.
That is really intense. It is an incredible amount of pressure needed.
Yeah, you think the spring is bad. Wait till it's attached to a pair of handlebars.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's crazy. And you have to balance the washer on top of that whole operation. And first you need to make the tool, and then you need to try to compress that spring.
Yeah, if you can rebuild a steering relay, you get a there's an automatic raise. That's like a skill, and it unlocks a raise.
It unlocks a raise. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You get the next level of experience points.
Yep, it's a true story.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is that is a terrifying thing.
Well, if you have any questions about rebuilding your steer, come and see us. give us a call over at Pangolin 4x4. We'd be happy to help you. You know, we don't want to see any Land Rovers careening off of, you know, curves or embankments or any of that. So give us a call. We'd be happy to help you. If you need any parts for your vintage Land Rover with relating to steering or anything else, we've got you covered.
Get Kevin to rebuild your steering relay before you try to do it yourself, because you might lose, you know, an eye.
We do.
Or an arm.
We do rebuild steering boxes, steering relays, and swivel assemblies on an exchange basis. So if you don't have the tools or inclination, send it to us. We'll sort you out.
And it looks easier than it is. I can tell you that much. Unless you can bench press like a Honda Civic. It's
which we all can.
Yeah, which you guys all can. It's commendable, I have to say. Commendable. Those things are really hard to compress. Well, at that, it's that time of the show again where we must say goodbye until next week. But it has been a slice. We've got some exciting stuff coming up here. We've got some mini episodes that we're doing through the end of the year because we are all going on a variety of different holidays and things, fancy Christmas holidays. And then we've got...
I'm not going anywhere. I will be here doing the show the entire
every
time.
day.
Every day.
The entire time.
Look for a daily show.
Get ready for Ike's daily updates on steering component adjustment. So look forward to that.
Yeah.
And head on over there to the old YouTube. Check that out as usual. If you've got any last minute Christmas shopping to do, you need stickers or anything, there's always the Underpowered Hour store up there for you. So go ahead and grab that stuff. And otherwise, we will see you next week.
Looking forward to it, Stephen.
Bye for now.
Adios, amigo.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Beres, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Beres. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.